I'll call the meeting to order.
Okay, give me 10 seconds.
Okay, we're good. I started it.
Okay. Good to
Okay,
go,
so
Paul.
I think that we're good to go. Thank you. I'm going to call our meeting to order, and thanks for everybody for coming. We have 8 of our 9 trustees. We're expecting our 9th trustee, Diane Rowland, to join us very shortly. So I'm going to call the meeting to order. 1.2 is the treaty acknowledgement. I'm going to read that out. We acknowledge the traditional land upon which Sunrise School Division resides as Treaty 1 territory. We honor our partnership with Canada's original peoples and respect the gifts of Indigenous history, culture, and language. We commit to moving forward in partnership with our communities in a spirit of collaboration and reconciliation. And 1.3 is O Canada, and we have Oak Bank Elementary singing O Canada for us. Please stand
sorry, Paul, actually queued up just to give credit where it's due. This is Bays, Beausejour.
Okay, so it's Beausejour early years. Please stand if you can. Thank you, Beausejour early years. For the public that has joined us, thank you for joining us. Just to let you know who is here in Beausejour, we have Kathy Timko, our superintendent, Scott Carlton, our secretary treasurer, and Stacy Bonato, our secretary to the board. Jackie Julian, our other assistant superintendent, is joining us from home. And then we have 8 of our 9 trustees that are here. The 9th trustee will be joining us very shortly. The 9th trustee is Diane Rowland. She'll be joining us, but we're going to move forward. So 2.1 is the adoption of the agenda. Be it resolved, the board approve the agenda. Can I get a mover and a seconder for the agenda?
Pachkowski moves.
Trustee Pachkowski, seconded by?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Trustee Inslee. Any questions to the agenda? Okay, hearing none, we'll vote electronically.
Paul, it has to be by hand until Trustee Rowland can join us.
Okay, so I'll go around the room and just make sure then that everybody is good. Trustee Barry? You'll have to come off mute, Trustee Barry.
Yes, sorry. Yes, Mr. Chairman, yeah.
Trustee Duma?
No, I vote against the agenda.
Trustee Harris?
Yes.
Trustee Inslee?
Yes.
Trustee Pachkowski?
Yes, and Trustee Rowland should be joining us shortly.
Trustee Reed? You'll have to come off mute, Russ. Trustee Reed? Okay, so are you accepting the agenda?
Yes.
Thank you. Trustee Rowland?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can. Thanks, Diane.
Oh, thank you.
And Trustee Nickel?
Yes.
And Mangyao says yes, so the vote goes 8-1. Thank you for that. So I think that everybody, if we can join the meeting, then we'll make sure that we can go ahead and do things electronically from now on. So the first item on our agenda is we have the board business. We have the transportation manager update. So I think this is Scott, 3.1. Floor is yours.
Yeah, we'll give a brief update on this, and then I'm happy to answer any questions. As you know, transportation manager offered her resignation. We did place a posting several places. We placed an ad in the Free Press, obviously posted on our website and distributed to our chain, our internal staffing. We also posted it on LinkedIn and Indeed, and gave about a week timeline on it. I believe we placed it around the 17th, and it originally closed on the 24th. Our intention was to have a very, very quick turnaround and discuss the resumes we received on Monday of this week, and potentially even an interview this week and come with a recommendation. As of the deadline on the 24th, we received only 12 resumes. I don't want to be overly critical of anybody, but as happens sometimes when you place it on widespread sites like Indeed and LinkedIn, you receive a number of resumes that are simply not qualified for the position. So we had very, very few resumes that would have qualified, I believe, to fill the position. And as such, and because it's such an important position to the division, I met with Jason on Monday. We discussed the quality and quantity of the resumes and felt that it may be in our best interest to extend the deadline and just not rush it. We thought it was too important to rush. I prepared this report a couple of days ago. As of Tuesday, we received an additional 9 resumes. I'm happy to report as of 5 o'clock today, we have 26 resumes now. So we received an additional 14 by extending this week. Jason and I, in fact, Jason already has, I'll provide my comments. Our hope is to shortlist, not necessarily for interviews, but get it down to half dozen or maybe 8 qualified candidates. We have a committee made up of 3 trustees, myself, Kathy, that intend to do the interviews. So we'll get those resumes for, let's say, 6 or 8 people out to the committee and then discuss who we would like to interview. I put potentially 4 candidates to interview, but we may want to extend that depending on everybody's thoughts. That was just a suggestion. Hopefully perform interviews later next week, and then be prepared for our next special meeting, which is on the 10th of August, to come with a recommendation.
Thanks, Scott. Can you just refresh our memory about who the trustees are that are on that committee?
Well, there's a bit of a question around that. Originally, Karen, Art, and Diane Duma. Potentially somebody who is connected to one of those trustees has actually applied for the position. So one of those trustees may be recusing themselves, which I think is a good idea if they're involved in the process.
So then we would look for a third trustee to sit in on with you?
Correct. I've already reached out to Trustee Nickel, and depending on when we do interviews and how, he's more than willing to sit on the interviews again if we can organize it. I think Don's preference would be via Teams. So if we can do that, then we'll certainly include Trustee Nickel.
Thanks, Scott. Any other questions from people? Okay, hearing none, Scott. Thanks for giving us that update.
I raised my hand, but I don't know where my hand went to on the forum. So I just raised it. Sorry.
Sure. I just didn't see your face, Diane. So right now I'm not looking at everybody's face. So yeah, well, just jump in. Go ahead, Diane.
So any of the people that have applied, are any of them resending revised applications? Is that something that's happening, or is it accepted? Just a question.
I've not seen any. So the 12 we originally received, we did not receive any again, whether the same or different in the further 14 we've received this week.
So there's been no contact with any of the applicants right now?
We did have one individual ask, and I've indicated we've extended the deadline and we'll be in touch next week.
Okay. And so are all of the applicants prior to today, the ones that prior to this announcement, are they also being advised with this deadline personally?
I'm not. I can reach out to them. We do have some internal candidates who were aware of our intended process, and those are the ones that are asking. I don't think we advised any external candidates of what the dateline or what timelines were with regard to our process, so I'm not sure what their expectations would be. They probably wouldn't be expecting to hear that quickly.
Thanks, Diane. Anyone else? Okay, hearing none, Scott. Thanks very much for going ahead and doing that. Scott, I think 3.2 is you as well. It's about the catchment boundary. It's about the catchment boundaries, and we have a motion out of there. Be it resolved that the Board of Trustees approve the adjustments to the Lac du Bonnet catchment area in accordance with the attached diagram. The board notes that the catchment adjustment is approved for the purpose of fiscal prudence only. I need a mover and a seconder, and then we'll have some discussion on that.
I'll move it.
Moved by Don Nickel, seconded by?
Wait a minute, with some changes.
Okay, Don.
So I want to change before I move it so that we don't have to have an amendment and everything. It says in accordance with attached, put down diagrams, because there's really two diagrams. I guess it's on one page, but I'd rather have it put down diagrams.
So you want an S on diagrams, okay. Thanks. We need a seconder to the motion.
Paczkowski will second.
Thanks, Trustee Paczkowski. So any questions to the, for the people that read the information? Any questions to the information? Any questions for, I guess there was a group of you that met. I think there were seven trustees that met. So you'll have a bunch of the information that was shared.
Yeah, just one piece of clarification from my perspective, Paul. We did meet, and we had a great meeting and came to a clear consensus on certainly the first resolution. The second, I think, required a little more information, and Diana forwarded her notes, but I think there was somewhat of a consensus to move forward with the second as well. And I think given the information that's provided there on the fact that it doesn't affect any families that are not attending Lac du Bonnet, so it doesn't affect anybody in a negative manner, I think that's probably prudent to move forward with that one as well.
I think the biggest thing that we're saying out here, Scott, is that we're moving the catchment adjustment is because of fiscal prudence is that we're taking a look at it. And that's something that's been put in the motion to be pretty clear with people. It's not that we want to open, it's not that we want to open up our doors for all kinds of boundary changes, but this does monetarily make sense.
Yeah, without getting into a whole bunch of detail, certainly there are some cases where it is longer and more expensive for us to transport students to one school than another, despite which catchment they live in. So it just makes more sense from a fiscal perspective to transport them the shorter distance, obviously.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else want to comment?
The only comment I would like to make, if we pass this motion, I'm not quite sure whether we want to do all that expense to get a cartographer and make new maps and everything else, because in the new year, we might be looking at a catchment review. So I'd rather not spend all that money making new maps until we find out exactly what we're going to do. It's quite easy to make those. Sorry,
Don.
Yeah, I was going to say it's quite easy to make those two changes without making new maps.
Yeah, and just so you know, I did try to reach out to some secretary treasurers and asked if anybody had opportunity for the use of a cartographer, and did get recommended one, certainly, and I reached out to them to see if they could ballpark what that cost may be, and they hadn't gotten back to me as of today. So I'm not sure what the cost would be, to be honest with you, and I think that's probably a fair comment. I could come back at some point with some idea what the cost is.
It's a good point that Don makes. Thanks, Don. Anyone else? Okay, hearing none, then we need to vote on the resolution.
Mr. Chairman?
I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah, oh, sorry, yes. I'd just like to clarify, it was a while ago since we had the catchment meeting, like, this isn't going to change any students going to different bus routes or anything? It's not going to alter anybody whatsoever. Am I correct in that?
The major change, Art, to be honest, is that there are a number of children who are picked up at a stop in Lac du Bonnet. If we change the catchment, they would no longer be school of choice, and as a result, we would have an obligation to pick them up at home. So it would expand the route a little bit. I did speak to Danielle on that, and there's not a concern with that route. It wouldn't extend it past the hour timeline, and the distance is quite short.
I'm sorry if I'm being too quick with everybody. I'm just kind of checking and looking and seeing if anybody's unmuting your microphone. Is there anyone else that wants to comment? Russ, I seen you've kind of unmute. Do you want to say something?
I don't think so. We were kind of having trouble here. We're not able to get on to ESB. I don't know why, but it's not working. And so we've kind of missed that last little bit of conversation that happened. We were trying to get logged on.
I think that the conversation, I'll try to summarize. Art wanted to know if this was causing an effect for anyone else, and Scott turned around and said, no, it wasn't. It meant then that people weren't going to be school of choice, and we would be ended up picking them up at their home and our obligation, and transportation says that's not a problem. Don turned around and said, I think the biggest, Don wanted to make sure that in the motion, it talked about diagrams, because we have 2 diagrams that are there. And I think that for the most part, we're doing this because it's fiscally a good idea for us to go ahead and do this. Did I miss anything from anybody? Oh, okay. So if I don't hear anything from anybody,
Okay, then I guess I would say something if I could.
Absolutely, Russ.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I guess the only thing I would question, I assume we're doing it because it's the right thing to do as well, not just because it's fiscally to our benefit. In my mind, because it's the right thing to do, that's what we should be doing. And I don't know, the whole catchment thing is, I find it very baffling, but I'm happy with the way it's going, so I guess I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Russ. Anyone else?
I can speak, I guess, just a bit.
Go ahead.
So yeah, the committee met at the end of June, and I just thought it was a very productive meeting. We had a lot of meaningful discussion. There was a lot of consideration in every which way possible with regards to everything spending, you know, where those borders were going to land, and what it did to how many people it could potentially affect. So I mean, there was a lot of discussion. I think I'm very supportive of kind of where we got to it. So I'm happy with where we're at with it right now.
Thank you. Anyone else? So Stacy, I'm assuming then that since Russ and Diane Rowland cannot get on, we're gonna have to vote by hand. Is that right, Stacy?
That's correct.
Okay. So I'm gonna call the question then, and I'm gonna go from the top. Trustee Barry, what do you say?
Yes.
Trustee Duma?
Yes.
Trustee Harris?
Yes.
Trustee Inslee?
Yes.
Trustee Pachkowski?
Yes.
Trustee Reed? Trustee Reed?
Yes.
Trustee
Sorry, I
Rowland?
had muted.
That's okay. Trustee Rowland?
Yes.
Trustee Nickel?
Yes.
And Trustee Manio is a yes, so that's 9-0. Thanks very much. Thanks for all the work from the committee as well, and thanks Scott for helping that out. 3.3 parent survey results. Thanks Kath for putting a bunch of information together for us, and for the different plans that were there. Thanks for going ahead and doing that. Kath, the floor is yours.
Thanks. So today, most people would have tuned in at 1 o'clock to listen to both the Minister of Education and the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Brent Rusin. They came up at 1 o'clock today with what their September plan is for reopening. I believe that it is on the provincial website, so www.gov.mb.ca under the COVID. It is entitled Welcoming Our Students Back, Restoring Safe Schools, and it is the same title as the previous document from June, but this one has a July 30th date. I believe that Scott forwarded that to you all earlier this afternoon while we were on a call with the province. So that document is there. We got that this afternoon. 2:30, we met with the province via teleconference. So we were able to meet with other divisions and listen to what's going on and kind of get some clarity around some pieces. There was also some loosening of the transportation guidelines. So we need to be able to look at the new document for the K-12 guidelines. We need to be able to look at the new transportation guidelines. They also hit send just as I was leaving to come here on some frequently asked questions that the province has put together. So we'll look at that. We'll take the survey results. Our intention, I think, on the bottom of the report that I provided to trustees would be then on Tuesday to sit down and have a communication ready to go back out to parents saying, here's what we now know to be true. We've had numerous emails and phone calls and really good positive feedback from all sorts of groups of parents. Again, understanding that wherever we land on September 8th is very likely that things will change. I think the one thing that I would maybe like to draw some attention to from this afternoon is nothing that the province talked about was drastically surprising. It wasn't anything that we went, wow, what are we going to do about that? Except the whole question around masks or no masks. So right now, Ontario is going with masks from grade 4 to grade 12. BC is going with masks. Manitoba is not going with masks. They did say a couple of times during the teleconference that that may change in the next couple of weeks. They wanted to make sure that they had their plan out, but don't have a really clear understanding of the to mask or not to mask question. So that was one of those things that I think we have to be at the ready. I think I have some internal documents that I included for all of you in terms of the some students, all students, no students, so that you have an idea of some of the thinking. We'll have protocols all in place. Last piece, I think, Paul, that I want to talk about is in our 2:30 teleconference with Manitoba Education, they're looking for school divisions to have something on their website for public by mid-October. We will communicate out to parents, hopefully Tuesday the 4th, if not then the 5th, just to make sure that they're aware of where we're at. We would have a bigger global picture of the plan by mid-October. Individual schools wouldn't be communicating with families maybe until they're back at school on September 2nd. So that was really, really clear with the province was divisions need to make sure that they're doing a good job of communicating with parents, but that individual schools might very well have some differences and they would not be communicating those out until a little bit later. I think that's the highlights. Scott, I think you were on the call as well. If there's something I've missed that you want to add, or if there are questions.
I'm going to go round table with questions because I think everybody's got questions or may have. But Scott, did you want to add anything?
No, I think that was a very good synopsis. I did download both the document Kathy's referring to and then the transportation guidelines, and I had a good look. And there's some concerns, but I think we need some time to talk and figure out a plan. I don't think it's far from what we anticipated would happen. I'll be honest. I think I have two major concerns: is trying to maintain social distancing in some of our facilities that are pretty full. And then the other one for me is transportation. But we'll start working our way through some of those guidelines.
All right, thanks, Scott. So I'm just going to go round table again. I'll start at the bottom on my team's list since Don is itching to go. So Don, go ahead with your questions.
Okay, first of all, you said mid-October. In other words, that's what I heard. Did you mean mid-August?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
I would mean mid-August. Yeah. Did I say mid-October? I'm so sorry.
Yeah, you said it twice. Okay, I just wanted to make
I'm already projected to the fall. I'll say it 3 times now. Mid-August. I really mean mid-August. Thanks, Don.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure if anybody was listening, they didn't come away with a wrong impression.
August. Good, thanks.
Okay, the other question I've got is that you're not requiring all schools to be be opening the same way, because some small, like a small school like Whitemouth will probably be able to get everybody there. Is it so that each school might have a different scenario, whether they're alternating or whether they're going full time?
Yeah, I think our intention is to try and get everybody there full time. So the province has said K to 8 students full time 5 days a week every day. They've said minimum for grade 9 to 12 is 2 of the 6-day cycle. But we're going to look hard at getting all kids back every day, all the time. It will be different in terms of the facility. It will be different in terms of that, I guess that magical word of cohorting. So how can we cohort kids? Can we keep groups of 75 students sort of in a particular area and 4 meters away from the next group of 75 kids? That'll be the next big challenge. How do we do that in the high school where they intermingle and mix for all of their courses? And the province identified that as a pretty big concern or issue.
Okay. And the next question is that I haven't had a chance to see whether they've changed the transportation guidelines, but is there any, or can you ask the department if we put up plastic shields between the seats? Can we have 2 people on the seat instead of 1?
And I think we want to have a chance to look at the transportation guidelines. A lot of what we'll be able to do is with manifests and seating plans. So being able to load buses back to front, I think how airplanes are supposed to be loaded. When we have families sitting together, then the more than 1 per seat will help us with that. Province also talked a lot about appealing to our families, and if there are families who are either willing or able to drive. I think the survey results were pretty close to 46% or somewhere around the 46% mark around families who are willing and able to drive. So we'll do a little bit more digging into that if that's a possibility as well, and that will help us out.
Okay, that's all the question I have right now.
Thanks, Don.
Trustee Rowland? You went back on mute again.
Yes,
There
I'm
you go.
back. I'm back. I didn't actually have any questions quite yet. You can put me at the end. I'll come back. I have been out of range for any Wi-Fi, so I'm just getting caught up to speed as I've been on holidays for 3 weeks. So
Fair enough.
listen up. Thank you.
Trustee Reed? Trustee Reed?
I'm not sure I have a question right now.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
I guess just one thing I was wondering about, the kids at the high school, like, is there any possibility of, good grief. Sorry, I've got a call.
I thought that was my phone.
No, it was
You've
mine.
got your own theme music, Russ.
We're having a terrible time here today, but I was just wondering, is there any possibility of sending students to an empty building that's located close to the school to facilitate distancing, or does something like that not work? Like, I know we have several places in Lac du Bonnet, for example, where students could go.
I think those are all things we'll look at, Russ. Part of what we talked about this afternoon with the province is, are we repurposing or looking at the spaces that exist in schools as well? The difficulty with splitting groups of kids and sending them here, there, and wherever is they need to have staff with them. So I guess maybe the other thing that I didn't mention earlier is our intention would be to look intensely at all of this information, to do some planning, and then to be able to come back on August 10th if there are any needs or any requirements or any, I guess, potential costs to that. We would bring that on August 10th so that we're still at the ready to bring that to you guys to look at, because there would have to be staff that go with them.
Good question, Russ. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Kath. Anything else, Russ?
No, that was the main question I had, because as I say, we do have buildings in Lac du Bonnet that are sitting open and they have washrooms and everything. And I just thought that if we were trying to distance people, then that would be some form of distancing, but
the cohorting is really helpful in terms of without cohorting, we have to keep people 2 meters apart. With being able to cohort, we can do 1 meter distance. So we're going to look pretty intensely at that.
okay.
Thanks, Kath. Trustee Paczkowski?
You know, I don't have too many questions. I think based on, you know, what I had heard from parents after we had sent out, you know, the 3 plans that our school division had made, I think this is going to appeal to a lot of parents based on what I heard at that time. I think everybody's going to be quite happy to have, you know, the majority of students back into classes on a full-time basis. That said, I know there's going to be some challenges and complications with respect to transportation and how we manage that. So that's a concern I have. And I know, you know, today was when we heard all this and we still have to figure a lot of things out. So I don't know if there's even any answers that can be provided to me in that regard, but I know that's a concern I have as a trustee, is how we're going to manage that at division with the number of students that we bus on a regular basis. So that's a concern I have for sure.
I guess the other piece is public health today. I think both at the public press conference and at our teleconference, there was a strong commitment from public health that if that was an issue in particular places, ours being very large geographically and having a large bus fleet, public health was more than willing to step up and work with divisions on that individual basis to make sure that whatever we come up with, if we have to have sort of different guidelines or amended guidelines, they will work with us to make sure that they're solid.
Thanks, Kath. Anything else, Jared?
No, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Inslee?
Thanks, Paul. The one thing I wanted to mention first is a lot of the feedback that I've been receiving is that the parents want their kids back in school full time, and I've had a lot of people reach out to me today after the announcement saying that they're really, really happy and that this is what the parents actually want. They want their kids back full time. I've got a couple of questions. Total number of responses on the survey was 1,483. So I'm just wondering, like, I've got a couple of questions, so you can jump in afterwards, Kathy and Scott, with regard to this. 1,483, how many should there be? I mean, how many, like, obviously, families, say, are there in the community? How many didn't respond? Because the numbers that came back from the survey, transportation willing to transport their own kids was 46%. Transportation where the parents require the division to transport the children is nearly 40%. And the reason I question the 1,483 is, like, how are we going to address if that 40% suddenly jumps to 60% of families needing their kids transporting on the buses? How is that going to affect the transportation, the financial aspect of it, how many kids we can get on a bus? Are we going to have to do more routes? The other question I had as well with regard to feedback from parents was the blended learning. And Scott, thank you, you sent that document to us earlier, that if we go back full-time kids in school, there's going to be some parents and families that are not comfortable right now sending their children back to school, or there's maybe going to be options where there's going to be kids sick and they need virtual learning. I know that I brought up the topic of the last board meeting that I can't remember with the blended learning document whether or not it's an option to do the in-class teaching and have a virtual option where the ones that are at home are actually on a video screen, because I've had they don't like that idea because they're not comfortable with their kids going back to school just yet. And me personally, I teach classes where some of the people are in front of me, some are on a video screen. So I'm just wondering if the blended learning will incorporate that. So I know it's a bit long-winded, but like my question is like, what happens about if that 40% of need to transport kids to school gets higher, and also the blended learning? So that's my question.
Great question. So first of all, the survey that we did at the beginning of July, our intention was always to do one later in August that would be more comprehensive, that would identify for us which families wanted transportation. So our intention right now would also be to, now that we have the plan from the province and we have the amended guidelines for transportation, is to take that plan and finalize it, get our bus routes done, and see how many children we can put on the buses. Our secretarial staff is back on August 24th, and we'll very likely use either the transportation staff or the staff here prior to that, and also the school staff, to be contacting families and finding out which of those families are willing and able to transport their children. It also might be a more in-depth survey. Some families may be able to transport their child or children in the morning and then need transportation in the afternoon, or vice versa, because they can either start their day later or can end their day earlier, but can't do both sides of transportation. So the way the survey was designed was not to identify who answered, which families answered, and that is something that we'll have to pick up and figure out which particular children need transportation. So that's a next step. I think in the report, I identified that as one of the bullets, is that's a big piece of what we have to do based on what the province is gonna let us know.
So right now, how many kids do we get on average on one bus? And if we have to do the distancing, like how many children will we be able to get on one bus?
It depends on a lot of factors, Karen. So it depends on the size of the bus and the size of the route. It also depends on how many of those children riding the bus are from the same family. Because right now, the guidelines in the transportation is one child per seat. So again, if there's 4 kids sitting across 2 seats, it's one child per seat. But if they're from the same household, they can sit in the same seat, and that increases our capacity.
They've actually, yeah, just to jump in, Kathy, sorry. They released some new guidelines with regard to transportation as well today, and what they're also saying is if we have children on the bus that are in the same class cohort, we possibly can put them on the same seat. So the answer right now, Karen, is we're not sure. We have to go through all of our buses, see how many kids we have on the same in the same class cohorts, see how many family members we have, and see how big of an issue it may be.
So that's a good question that Karen's asking, but it's probably an August the 10th answer as you're getting more information that's coming along, because they did say about the cohort thing. That was certainly new, but it is a good question that people are wondering and that they're asking. So good one, Karen. Anything else, Karen?
There was a blended learning bit that you asked as well. Yeah. So the blended learning is going to go 2 ways. So one of the pieces that we heard early in the spring was when we first had suspension of classes, we were in a reactive stance where we're like, oh my goodness, this is new for everybody, and we were reacting. We're now in a proactive place where all of our classrooms and all of our teachers have a very clear expectation that the virtual platform for learning will be Office 365 Teams. So every classroom and every teacher will be set to do that on one platform. It will help in a number of different ways, and we can get into that later. The difficulty with doing it only virtually is we also have some families who, it's not about the devices, it's that there is no connectivity in the area in which they live. So we have to do a twofold. It's either through virtual delivery on Teams, or it is going to be paper pencil. That's going to impact some time for teachers, so we'll get a better handle on how many students or how many families are not comfortable sending their children. We have looked at other jurisdictions, and we have looked at the startups in other places around the world, and very typically there's a percentage that don't send their children at the beginning, but then once things get underway, that diminishes as well. But the 2 platforms we would use would be either Office 365 Teams or actual paperwork.
So for police, I mean, I appreciate that there's some areas that internet is an issue, and so it's pen and paper, but for things like Oakbank, Springfield, connectivity is like pretty good. So is there going to be an option for the combined virtual and in-person classes for the locations that can accommodate it?
Yeah, so that will come out of each classroom, but it will be on one platform, and that would be through Office 365 Teams. And so all of our staff will be working with the families and any of those people who need to get set up to do that from the classroom, from our teachers.
Okay, because obviously everybody wants their kids back in school full time, but if they can't,
so do we want them back full time.
Virtually, perfect. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Trustee Harris?
One quick question. Did the province consult with divisions in any way prior to their announcement today?
Yeah, so on the 22nd of July, they asked us for all of the documentation and all of the stuff that we had, and I think that's some of the documents that I provided you. So each division in the province forwarded all of that information to the province, and the province went through and looked at what each division was saying and providing, and they came to their plan based on what each division submitted to them. The process for how they looked at that or who looked at it, or I don't know that process, but each division sent that in for July 22nd.
Thank you.
Trustee Duma?
A question about, there's a survey on the website right now. Is that survey coming down and a new one going up?
Right now the survey is open, and we said that we would leave it up until the 22nd or the 23rd, but we can take the information on a daily basis and add it to what we know. So we've left it open as a communication tool in case someone missed it. We were waiting for the announcement from the province so that we could then look at what else do we need to know. We didn't have the transportation guidelines until today, so that may prompt some new questions. Again, I think we will look long and hard at whether or not that will be a website survey or whether that will be schools and or division staff that are actually contacting families so that we can do that in a way that was more like the survey we did earlier in April, where we asked people to identify who they were, and that helps us to plan for each family.
So one of the questions on that survey is about the half day. Are we not just going to remove that one completely anyway, based on the feedback we've had? I think we had less than 6% of the responses, and then there were tremendous emails saying the half day was just not a good idea. And it is one of the questions on the survey. So
yeah, I'm okay with leaving it on in terms of, I mean, we do have that 6% who are saying that works for them. It's not going to be the piece that we land on because clearly there's not a lot of people who are choosing that, but it is an option. One of the pieces at the teleconference today and at the press conference that both Minister Gertsen and Dr. Rusin pointed out is we have to be flexible and we have to be set for change. They don't know any more than anyone else what that's going to look like as we roll through the next months or even the next years, I think is what Dr. Rusin said. So it may be something that we have to look at further down. It may be something that we have to look at some point in time. So I'm okay leaving it on there. More options is always good.
Have you had discussions with staff or any kind of staff response from across the division as to what's going on?
So teaching staff are off right now. I have a meeting with our STA president next week. So again, we're very aware of the timeline of what the province was announcing. So we'll meet with them. MTS also put out a document and have been part of the consultation process with the province. So they've been at the table doing some of the consulting as well. We will send stuff out to our principals to share with staff Tuesday. So our intention would be to hear from the province and then give them an informed look at what we know.
And I guess the other question is, I guess as we move forward, I think there was a question raised by one of the trustees about the flexibility in each area, as some schools are larger, some are smaller. So there, it's not going to be a one size fits all for Sunrise School Division. It's going to be, I'm assuming, something that's more locally driven and locally managed based on the differences in each area.
Yeah, that's been a driving, like a guidepost for our conversations with principals the whole way along. Is we've met weekly all the way along and have said we need to be both aware of what everybody else is doing, but also aware of what does or does not work for our own environments. So just kind of having that open conversation about what is everybody doing, because maybe it's something that someone else hasn't thought about, or maybe it's just something that does or doesn't work in a particular area. And our schools are really spectacular in terms of listening to one another and taking all of those pieces in. So yeah.
Okay,
Good
thank
point.
you.
Thanks, Trustee Berry. You're on mute, Art.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I got a couple questions here. It's good that the province announced a plan here, but I guess I'm having real trouble just separating this. Their plan with K-8 is no restrictions, but however 9 to 12, unless I'm misinterpreting it, says it wants to go to a two classes in a 6-day cycle, and they can have cohorts. I don't understand the difference between the two age groups. So we're saying there's no restrictions for the young kids whatsoever. I'm really at a loss for this. Aren't we supposed to be making sure all the students and all our employees are safe in a safe environment here? I'm just confused at this difference between these two age groups.
Yeah, the difference, Art, would be that in K-8, very typically those classes of kids have one teacher in one classroom. So a grade 2 classroom of kids are together all day long in the same space, all together getting their math and their ELA and their social studies and their science, typically by one teacher. In high school, Minister Gertson, I think, did a really good job of saying it. In high school, every class is an elective. So you don't take the same classes with the same group of kids. You go to math with a group of 25, 30 kids. Then you go to ELA with a different group of 25, 30 kids. So cohorting in 9 to 12 is really difficult because it's not the same group that you can cluster and move from one place to the next with.
And what is cohort?
Cohort is that one group of students staying together. So the province is saying that 75 is the magical number for a group of kids who can travel together in a pack. That's probably a really dreadful way, but if 75 kids are all following the same schedule or in the same space, then they're okay. And that's tough to do at high school, to keep the same 75 together. And I think
they could be within a meter? They can be within a meter?
Yeah.
But however, the younger ones have to be 2 meters? Or am I wrong on that?
Yeah, it's just flipped. So
I'm
the younger
just
ones
confused at this. 1 to 2 meters.
If they can cohort, so if we can keep the same group traveling together, they only have to be 1 meter away from one another. If there is intermingling, if there are high school classes that are coming and going and not in the same group or in the same pack of students, they have to be 2 meters apart. So the more there are in the mix, the farther the distance. The less there are in the mix, the closer they can be to one another.
Okay, and I guess my next question is, the province announced, they said that every school division has tracked all the savings for the classes not being open earlier on this year, and these savings can be used for the additional costs for that the school divisions have to allocate on this. So I assume we're going to get track of all the additional costs, like cleaning buses, cleaning everything, so we can keep track of all this stuff in the future.
Yeah, we've been doing that the whole time along, and Scott will probably jump in and talk about that. So right from
the future, the stuff down the road, I'm talking about the future.
Yeah. So things like tables or desks instead of tables, things like cleaning, things like sanitizers. If we do go down that road of masks, those are absolutely the things that we'll keep track of and make sure that we'll bring back to August 10th and beyond.
And I guess touching on what Russ, Trustee Reed said, yeah, there is he's right. There is empty buildings. There's empty buildings in basically every community. Our hall here in Beausejour sits empty a lot of times. So that's something maybe down the road we can look at. We have to sort of think outside the box on that aspect. And my final question is on the surveys. It's nice to get the parents' response, but I'm sort of wondering out loud, is it beneficial to even send out more surveys? Because we get such a low response. Like, you ask these people, you can't force them to do a survey. Like Springfield, yeah, we're getting a good result from Springfield area. And Beausejour is only 29%. The rest are all virtually there's nothing. So I don't understand the benefit of even doing it. That's just me talking. Like, if no one's going to answer it, why we keep sending it out?
And I think Art, that's a great point, and I think that's some of our thinking around, do we have the schools connecting with their families directly, because then that gives us the information. So over the next couple of weeks, we'll dig into that and say, how are we getting into the face and space of our families so we know what they need? We did that in April, where we actually asked them to identify themselves and followed up with phone calls, and we got a really good response from that. It's a good point.
Okay, that's it. That's it for me, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Art. Diane Rowland, I'm going to come back to you.
Sorry, here I am. Just a little bit to follow up on sort of where Art was going. I would really like to have our staff contact, I mean, I'm sure you will be contacting all families to actually see how many are not coming back. And the sooner the better on that. That may have some effects on some classrooms. I know that there's lots to be planned, and I feel much more comfortable and confident in where we are today. I think things are going to be fine, and Kathy, you're doing a great job.
Thanks.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting and different, but I know that our staff and everyone's up to the task, and we're going to have our things together when schools come. I don't really have more questions. Going to wait and come to next meeting with our final plans. Thank you.
Thanks, Trustee Rowland. Katha, I don't want to ask any questions, but what I do want to comment on is I want to comment on kind of what Trustee Rowland said, is that, you know, great work for what we're doing. Great answers to information that you got at 1 o'clock and 2:30 today as to where things are. There are good questions that people are asking. Hopefully there's 3,500 people that are watching tonight, so that they're listening to some of the answers that are being shared and the work that's going behind it. Thanks to knowing that we're getting back together on August the 10th to give more information as to what we know and where we are. I'm really glad that Art brought up the question about the cohorts, because I think that the cohort question, people don't quite understand meaning what a cohort is, and you explained it really well, Kath, about a group of kids that travel together, like a grade 1 and a grade 2 normally have. The elementary kids and junior high kids or middle years kids have usually one teacher that teaches them the bulk of the courses. A lot more challenging in the high school, and going from 1 meter to 2 meters, you know, you've answered some of those questions so great. And again, we got some new news about transportation. So that's the work that you guys are going to be doing now between August the 10th, and kudos to you. So thanks very much for putting that information together.
Can I do one last comment?
Sure.
One of the things that we have been, again, the team has been brilliant with answering questions. You know, Jackie, Jason, Leanne, Scott have been just brilliant with answering phone calls and emails. We have had nothing but positive feedback from parents in terms of, oh, I'm glad I called, or I'm glad I'm emailed, I'm glad we spoke. I guess if there are millions of people watching this, or we're talking to anybody, I would rather hear from people, and we can get through what it is that those concerns or frustrations are. We would rather hear from folks if there's something that they have a question about.
So now that we went, now that we've gone through with everybody and asked questions, I'm going to ask anybody else if they have any other questions, because maybe you forgot, or maybe somebody else asked you a question, thought it was a good one. So I'm just going to open it up. Are there any other questions? And maybe
I could have a question.
Yes. Okay. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go around again, guys.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to go around again. Don Nickel, any other question?
Yes, I just want to clarify that dealing with statistics when Trustee Barry said that they didn't respond very much. If you look at Whitemouth, it said they got 55 replies. So that's 55 parents. The 3.71 isn't the amount, the percentage from coming from Whitemouth. It's the percentage coming from the whole division. So 55 coming from Whitemouth, there's probably only about 70, maybe 70 parents. I don't mean parents, but families. There's probably only 70 families in Whitemouth. So if you get a response of 55, that's a very good response from Whitemouth. Same thing if you're looking at Lactabani, it says 6.47, but that's from the response they got, the 1,483. So I don't know how many parents are in Whitemouth, in Lactabani, but that is the 6.47% is kind of misleading. I think we got a very good response because I don't know how many families we have in the division altogether, but probably no more than there's 5,000 students. And say if there's only one, divide that by 2 because there should be 2. Say there's 2 parents, so there's 2,500 parents at the most probably, and some parents have 2, 3 kids. So having a response of 1,483, I think it's very good.
Thanks, Don, for clarifying that. That's a great mathematician there that's coming back and sharing that. So good, Don. Thanks for doing that. I'm going to go up again. Trustee Rowland, anything else to ask?
No, I think I'm good. Thank you.
Trustee Reed?
Well, my comment or question was identical to Don's. I had exactly the same question because I was thinking that we have a smaller number of parents in the small communities. And so, of course, when you throw it in there with the whole group and say, well, what percentage, it comes out as a small percentage, but it's actually a large percentage of that particular community. So, Don and I were right on the same page.
And you weren't even a math teacher. You were a humanities teacher, weren't you, Russ?
Well, I think I was an everything teacher.
Right on.
I did phys ed, I did history, I did math, I did language arts, you name it.
Thanks, Russ. Trustee Paczakowski?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I did agree. I agree with what Don said too. It's a good representation. I think we got a really good response division-wide. The one thing that I heard as other trustees were asking questions and raised some thoughts for myself here is I think it was Diane, Trustee Duma, that asked about staff, and that was a good question because I was having the same thoughts, and I just wanted to add to that is, so I think Trustee Duma had asked about if staff had concerns at this point about what was happening, and what type of position are we going to be in if there's refusals to work and those types of things? Like, what are we going to do in those situations? And then the second thing I had was, what was it here? I just made notes. Oh, it was about cleaning. So has there been any direction from the province today at this point? And maybe there's not, and I'm sure you guys will probably get that maybe or maybe not, but are we going to be looking at some expanded janitorial services for the short term to ensure, because I would imagine that I don't know what they do now, but is there going to be excessive, like more cleaning than there usually is? And I'm just wondering about that piece too. So,
Kath, do you want to try that?
Yeah, so one of the pieces Dr. Rusin talked about was some of those protocols and what that might look like, and he wasn't going to commit to a date. He said soon. So we have a lot of those. Our HR department has been on that the whole entire time in terms of refusals to work and what that might look like. We've looked at substitutes. We've looked at all of those pieces. So I think we're at the ready with that. And then some of those other protocols for cleaning, Scott will work with maintenance, and we'll make sure that we have a process and a protocol in place for that. It will need to be in line with whatever public health comes out with as well. It is high touch surfaces. It is frequent traffic areas. and making sure that we use September 2nd, 3rd, and 4th for training all of our staff and getting them ready.
So just to add a couple of things on the staffing, we have already been a little proactive and ordered some PPE. We have some masks available, so if people are uncomfortable and wish to wear a mask, despite the fact it's not a provincial directive, we can certainly make that available to our staff. There is some guidelines. You'll see I have the report, and I've got my highlighted copy already. I spent the last couple hours looking through. Some of the cleaning is going to be more. One of the guidelines is to disinfect commonly touched surfaces at least twice daily, doorknobs, light switches, things like that. So it certainly is going to be more work, but we're going to start dissecting this and seeing what our obligations and what sort of resources we'll need.
Thanks, guys. Trustee Inslee?
Thanks. Yeah, there was a couple of things that I did forget to ask. One of the things, I think, Scott, it was in the report that you maybe sent, I'm not sure, community use of the schools is banned. So that means no private extracurricular fitness, like professionals renting space or doing any other extracurricular activities. Am I correct on that? So, because I know that sometimes people use the school gyms and rent it out, so everything is like ceased right now?
Yeah, that was one of the directives that actually surprised me a little bit. I've got it right in front of me. Community use of schools will be suspended with the exception of child care centers operating in schools. So that's correct. We want to limit the number of non-school staff or students that are in the building. So visitors and volunteers will be expressly cut out, unfortunately.
And that includes even the, because obviously in Springfield, like the RM, I believe, in the past. So even the RM of Springfield will not be given access to the schools, I'm assuming.
Yeah, as far as I can tell, I mean, it's a one sentence in here. You know, we can ask for more direction on that, but it's pretty clear, I think, in the report that community use of schools will be suspended.
And I can't remember what which trustee it was talking about utilizing space in communities. Has the I mean, obviously I'm obviously relative like Springfield. So has the RM of Springfield been reached out to see if there's actually any space that we can utilize for its extra classes in and around Oakbank?
So until we had the report from the province, we haven't done any of the reaching out or any of that planning, because it is one of those pieces that we want to be able to look at and take the information that we got just today and then go with that. I wanted to back up a little bit and also talk the rationale around community use of schools. Today's announcements had lots to do with contact tracing. And the whole notion that Trustee Barry talked about was that the cohort, by keeping small cohorts, it allows the province and public health to do a more efficient job of contact tracing if someone should be confirmed a positive case. So they're trying to minimize the number of different cohorts that are in the same space.
And now that the province have made their announcement with regard to reaching out to like the RM of Springfield or each particular ward, how soon are you going to actually initiate that reaching out to municipalities to see whether or not there is any space that we can actually utilize?
I think step one is to figure out whether we need space. So step one for us is to figure out what we can do and what we need. So we're going to look at the cohorting first, and then we would look at what we might need and go from there.
Okay.
Thanks, Kath. Thanks, Trustee Harris.
Just a thanks to our staff. I can see that you're going to be busy all summer, and particularly in the next week or two with all of the new information that was released today. No more holidays. No more holidays.
Thanks, Trustee Harris. Trustee Duma.
So some of our students that are attending like College Pierre Elliott or Selkirk those students are just adhering to what those divisions are doing, correct?
Correct.
And if they may be getting transportation with our buses, we just follow what our division does there, right?
Right.
Okay. And in terms of the signing up for classes in the spring for high school students, were they able to sign up for their courses in March?
Oh yeah, timetables are all done and kids have their credit checks and their timetables all in place.
Okay, so no one's timetables are necessary. What the courses that they selected are going to be changed because of anything that we're doing.
Yeah, the only one that I think that the province has listed as we're not doing is choir. So it would be one of those where if we have any choir classes, the vocal they are saying is unsafe to be doing. I think that's the only one that they have identified as they don't have a protocol or a process for.
And so when we had students coming over from SMS over to the high school, that is going to happen, continue for, I think they were taking exposures class, were they not? Or is that still happening?
Yeah, so one of the things I think in one of the internal documents about the SUMAL is we have to look at the exposures in the Springfield area because we also have the Dugald students, the Enola students busing over to SMS for some of their exposures, and we probably would not have that happening. So those schools will have to look at different possibilities for their exposures options because we don't want to put them on the bus any longer or introduce them into different buildings.
Right. So there's
we'll look at the SMS SCI thing because it's the same teachers and they share that space. So yeah, we'll have a look at that for sure.
Okay. But band programs will still be able to continue, like the 7:30 in the morning programs, or not?
We'll look at that. There's nothing that says that we can't continue on doing band. We have to look at what that the social distancing and the measures we have to have in place and what that might look like. So we'll take a look at it and see what we can and can't do.
I think Diane asked some good questions, Kath, and one of the things was schools, some of the high schools may not be able to offer all of the different exposures or option courses. So Diane said is that, okay, everybody got their timetables. We might not be able to offer everything that we have because of not being able to keep groups or cohorts together, right?
Or cleaning equipment. So one of the boxes in the grid that we sent out was how do we make sure that all of the equipment, if I use industrial arts as an example, right? We don't have enough hammers and saws for everybody to be using their own, so they have to be sanitized in between. What does that look like? In all of those courses, I think the language I used was that have shared equipment, close proximity, or are out in the community. We have to look really long and hard at what are those three things. If we're sending students out into the community for coursework like credit for employment or for apprenticeship, if we've got shared equipment, things like drama where kids are right in close proximity, what do those look like and how do we do that safely?
Yeah, so when Diane said that everybody has their timetables and they're not going to be affected, they may be affected. But that's something that you need to look at. That'll be better when you have August the 10th. Yeah. But I heard Diane talk about it and I just said, that's something that you're going to look at, but because of, yeah, let's go back to industrial arts. Not every, there's 10 hammers there. You know what? You're getting multiple kids using those 10 hammers throughout the day. How do you do that? But I just wanted to, Diane brought up a good question and that's something that you guys are going to look at and have some more answers come August the 10th. Okay,
well,
thank you.
If I could add into that, because I think that depending on what the costs are for some of these things, I think this might be something that we incur as a COVID cost. It's not extremed by extra hammers but I'm also thinking of some of the musical equipment that we have. I think we have to do as much as we can to make sure that the kids are still going to get a very good education and not be held back because we couldn't purchase 10 hammers. Like I'm kind of being facetious about it, but I think that has to be the focus of where we put the dollars that we get. So just throw it out there.
Yeah, our teachers have been really creative with it too. They've looked at as educator groups. They've looked at some really creative solutions with those kinds of things. So I have no doubt that they'll come up with some creative solutions, and we might be coming back saying, "Hey, one of the examples we talked about is a 3D printer for mouthpieces for instruments. You can 3D print mouthpieces. Do we want to invest in something like that?" There've been a ton of creative, so we'll get that all together for you guys.
And again, I think that Catherine, we're also asking you lots of questions that, you know, you got the information again at 1 and 2:30 today, as to where you can get to. So kudos to you for what
So
you're
like by
answering.
9 o'clock tonight, I'll have all the answers, is what you're saying?
There you go. I thought so. I just wanted to add that for sure. Thanks. Trustee Barry, last chance. Any questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'd just like to thank my fellow trustees for that clarification on the survey there. Yeah, that makes more sense now. And the only other question I'd have is going along, I think it was Trustee Petrikowski said about the cleaning and the additional cost that could be possibly associated with the cleaning. I assume that'll be looked into the additional cleaning that we'll have to do on the buses for transportation, like who's going to clean the buses at the end of each day. They'll have to be cleaned at a different manner than they ever were in the past. Let's put it that way.
Scott's going to clean them.
Yeah, there's a couple issues there as well, Art. And again, you know, having reviewed the information just this afternoon.
Yeah, I know. I realize it.
One of the things, though, is also when there's a different set of students coming on, that there's a requirement that we clean the bus, and I'm unsure at this point what that means for us, because we have a lot of students who transfer. They get off one bus and on to another on their way to school. So there's a lot of clarification we're still looking for at this point. But you're right. I mean, we're definitely going to have more requirements in terms of cleaning buses.
So, Kath, today you heard from 9 trustees, and there was lots of questions. There was lots of what if questions, those kind of things. And I believe that trustees over the next 10 days are going to get asked by a number of the public a lot of what ifs. Well, what if this and what if that? What's your suggestion for them to tell the trustees, or you know what, trustees then to respond? For instance, will our kid be able to ride the bus? Are there going to be too many kids there? There's going to be a lot of what ifs. I know you're coming out with some information on August the 4th. You're coming back to us on August the 10th. What are some of the things that you would like them to share? Go ahead, Kath.
So one of the things that I think I said earlier was that the province came out with a frequently asked question piece. Will my child be at school? Do they need masks? How far apart will they be? Is there hand sanitizer? Are there special breaks? Who's going to clean the desks? Is there going to be recess? The province came out with a draft version of those questions. So again, I probably will hit send and draw your attention to the fact that this is draft from the province, but that should give you 5 pages of answers if that helps.
So to trustees then, there's going to be lots of questions that are going to come your way. Some of them, Kath, is the best thing for us to bring those questions or give them to you ahead of time and for us to talk about them on August the 10th. I think that that's something that trustees will be asked for. They might not be able to answer, but it's something that they can send to you, and they'll try to get some more. We'll try to get some more, have this kind of a conversation on August the 10th as well.
You bet.
Perfect. Thanks, Kath.
Thanks.
So let's move on.
Can I ask the chair a question? Is the board required to provide this plan to the province? Does the board approve the plan that comes forward from the superintendent? What makes it something that we do? How does it get approved? And is the province requesting that the board have something submitted?
So no, they aren't. In our 2:30 conversation, the province is working directly with superintendents to get the plan, to have it up on the website. I will share it with all of you and make sure that there are things that you're in support of or comfortable with, or if we need any pieces that you think we've missed. But the province is working directly with us in terms of what that looks like and what everybody's doing. That was the 2:30 conversation. I don't think I've had any, Paul, have you had any communication?
None.
Well, I guess as a trustee, considering the feedback that we got when the letters went out at the end of June, I want to make sure that the board is working on this together and that we're agreeing to it, and we can support whatever goes forward in September, because I don't want to have an explosion of discontent again. So that's why I just thought it's important to have the board on board with what is being proposed, and I guess that's what I'm asking for.
Kath, my understanding is that we've got timelines going forward where you're going to share some initial information, kind of sharing what you shared today with us. You're coming back to us on August the 10th with some more information. Schools aren't really getting, you said that schools aren't really giving individual information out until probably 3 days beforehand. Is that fair?
Yeah, so what the province said today was we want to try to get a general communication out to our families. So we'll take what was shared today and put that in a general communication and try and get that out Tuesday, saying exactly what we talked about, that we're talking about kids coming back full-time all day, like all of those pieces, that we're considering all of the health directives. So it'll be very general stuff. They would like to have sort of our plan on our website mid-August is what they said. So that puts us in good stead with coming back here on August 10th and then putting something on our website. And then schools will have individual information for families coming out the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th of September.
So I guess coming back to what Diane's asking for, is that you're coming back to the board on August the 10th with here's you basically gave us a snapshot of what you're saying on August the 4th. On August the 10th, you're coming back for some a little bit more detail with some of the things. But individual schools, and I'm going to choose Springfield Collegiate and Whitemouth. Their high schools may certainly have a different, be able to do things differently because of there are 80 kids in high school in Whitemouth, and there's 450 or 500 kids in Springfield in their high school. And they may not be able to do as many of the cohorts that you can do or the groupings that you can do from one school to the other. You do need those administrators to help you with that. That's part of the reason why they're coming back 3 weeks ahead of time, and 3 weeks ahead of time, 3 days ahead of time. Oops, it was a Freudian slip, by the way.
Lots of them emailed me today. You're fine.
Yeah, but I think that's kind of what we're looking at is certainly about having some listening to you as to bringing back a report to us. Certainly making sure that we're on board with kind of the plan that's going out. Fair enough?
Fair enough. I think Jackie had tried to say something a couple of times. Jackie, did you have something to add?
You know, I just wanted to add, kind of while the discussion was going, that the other piece that we didn't mention, and you may get people ask, is in both the press conference today and in the meeting at 2:30, it was also special needs students will be back at school full time. So for K to 8, that made sense. But we do have students in high school who are children with exceptionalities or multiple complex needs. So we will be planning to have them back full time. And I've already started looking at how that would work with cohorts and keeping them as a group. So just think you might get that question from parents as well.
Yeah, great addition, thanks.
So Kathy, you did ask me a question, and it goes back to Diane a little bit about what we did as board chairs. There is a meeting with the board chairs at 10:30 on August the 11th to continue with our, they suspended the meetings for 4 weeks, but coming back again on August the 11th with regard to some information with regard to boards. But I would say that that's kind of the information that's going forward, and good to bring that up, Diane. Thank you.
Can I just ask a question for clarification? You just said something about like parents being or schools having information available 2nd, 3rd, 4th of September. Can you just clarify when are parents going to be given the information as to what's actually going to happen?
I'll try that. So I think what Kathy sent out is she's going to send something out. They're required to send something out on August the 4th. So some information on behalf of us, similar to kind of what we talked about now, about all kids going back to school, K to 8. We want them in there. We're knowing that we have to have, we're getting them in cohorts. They can be 1 meter apart. If we can't get them in similar groups or cohorts, they have to be 2 meters apart. The details of the high school stuff is probably not coming out until September 2nd, 3rd, or 4th.
Okay.
Is that fair, Kath?
But the rest of the schools, I mean, I'm just wondering that I just want the parents to have sufficient time to plan and have enough time to get themselves organized or to know what's actually happening. So I just wanted some clarification as to the timelines, because it just maybe I wasn't just like keeping up with it.
Yeah, and the only piece I would change, Paul, is we're not obligated to communicate with families on August 4th. The province said we need to make sure our families know by the middle of August. Our intention in Sunrise is to send something out either Tuesday or Wednesday so that they have that notice you're talking about, Karen.
Oh.
But I think the biggest thing that's coming out, the biggest thing that's coming out of tonight is the meeting that went on today, the announcement went on today, is that we're looking at in Sunrise to have certainly our K-8 kids in our schools 5 days a week.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, my computer locked up, so I missed
okay.
10-15 seconds of what you said. So okay.
So we can move forward to 3.4, the year-end financial results. Scott?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sorry. Art?
Oh, yeah, I just wanted clarification, unless I'm misunderstanding it here. Just so I understand the whole process going forward. So the superintendent's going to release something to the parents on August 4th, and then we're going to meet on August 10th. Are those two documents going to be different? Or are they going to be the same? Or I'm just kind of unsure of the whole process going forward. I understand it's directed by Minister of Education and these timelines, we have to let the parents know, but I'm just concerned, is it going to be different? What August 10th will be versus August 4th, and something else is going to have to send out to the parents? I don't know.
So August 4th, Art, will be sort of a synopsis or a summary of what we heard today. So if there's any families or parents who weren't listening to the news or who didn't hear this or who aren't watching our meeting right now, we'll have something for them that gives them the highlights and the high level of what we talked about tonight so that they're in the know. On August 10th, the intention would be to come back to the board and say, as Scott and Jackie and Jason and Leanne and I do some heavy lifting around what should that look like going forward, we may have some pieces where like, here's what we know about transportation, or we need to look at other space. We're going to bring that back to the board so that for mid-August, if we have to do any revisions or we have to do any more detailed parts to the plan, that we'd be at the ready for that.
Did that answer?
I just want a clarification on that. That's good. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move forward off of this. Thanks, guys. Great questions. Good job, Kath. 3.4, preliminary year-end financial results. Scott, the floor is yours.
Thanks. So, there's been some question around, it's been obviously a bit of a different year for us, given the province's mandate to stop spending any non-essential on any non-essential expenditures. So there's been some question about where we think we're going to land. Generally speaking, year end, I just want to clarify. There's always a balance, and I don't want to get into a whole bunch of detail on accounting, but there's a balance between timeliness and accuracy. And when it comes to July, I could push a button on August 1st and fire off a report, but it won't necessarily be accurate. So when we get to year end, we generally extend out the reporting until such time as we've had auditors look at it and get a little more careful in terms of the accounting processes, just to make sure we're accurate. But I understand the board's desire to get an idea of what it looks like, where it looks like we're going to land. So I'll leave it at that unless there's questions, certainly.
So Scott, just to clarify, so right now what you've sent to us is that we're looking at the figure that you've shown us. And we also heard from the province that whatever surpluses that we have from this year, and people talked about it, I've heard a few people talk about it, whether it's staffing, whether it's more masks, whether it's more hand sanitizers, whatever, we can use from that surplus that we have to help cover that cost. Is that fair?
That's fair, and I was very happy to hear that. There's a couple of things again in my report that's all highlighted up that are somewhat interesting to me. For example, I'll read one of these sentences. School divisions and schools will ensure that all students who are participating in remote learning have access to technology. I I'm not sure what that means or how much that will cost us. So I was very happy to hear Minister Gertsen say that today, that any surpluses could be kept by divisions and used towards potential increased expenditures in the fall. We've also received confirmation from Manitoba Education that, generally speaking, we have a limit of 4% on our accumulated surplus. They are willing to waive that for us for this year end, with the understanding that most divisions will exceed that 4% threshold. So, you know, I'm again happy to hear that, and we'll see what the cost will look like in the fall.
I think the other thing that the board is asking for, Scott, is you've given us a figure now that is out there. And is this have you shown, is this figure public to everybody, Scott?
I wouldn't release it public yet. You know, it's subject to change based on audit. You know, we will have auditors come in and take a look at it and see if there's any adjustments that are required. But I don't anticipate it being substantially different. And if it ends up being different in the audit, I'm certainly going to bring any changes to that number. I mean, the one item, obviously, that's substantial, that's still kind of hanging out there, that has not been reflected in those financial statements, is the potential arbitration award, which we've talked about in the past as a board.
Yeah, fair enough. So, Scott, the other thing is that what the board is saying is that if we do have a surplus, and it looks like we do, is the fact is that we're not, Scott Carleton is not turning around to put a roof on the Powerview Arena. And I'm just using that being facetious a little bit here. It's not something that Scott's going to go ahead and decide that you can't go ahead and take that money to go ahead and do that. But bottom line is that whatever money that we're going to spend is going to come back to the group of the board here and say, hey, you know what? So I've just got to go ahead and pursue or persuade 8 other people to go ahead and put a roof on the Powerview Arena to go ahead and spend money.
Yeah, I think that's something that we should narrow down. We talked a bit about that in Finance Committee, actually. You know, I'll preface that by saying, you know, from time to time we do have overruns on budget, and you know, certainly the board needs to be aware of that, and it should be brought to the board. But there's not a conscious decision made that we have surplus money now, I'm going to go spend it on X or Y.
Right, and I think that if you want, I guess if the question is, Scott, that you needed to go ahead and spend it on X or Y, you're coming back to the board, and the board is then voting on that to go ahead and do that. I think that that's just a clear question that I just wanted to be very transparent with that conversation. So thanks
Correct,
for going
absolutely.
ahead and sharing
so yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions for Scott with regard to that information from anyone?
Yes.
See Trustee Nicol waving his arm there.
Yeah, go ahead, Don.
According to our bylaw and our report that we get, the monitoring report, you can't go over budget. So obviously we're going to spend, and this this surplus that we've got there is not in the budget. So there's no way that we can spend any of that money, because if we do, then we are going against the bylaw. So is there any way that we can make amended budget so that it reflects the amount of money we've been spending, so that when we look at during the year, we can see whether we in budget or not?
I think that's something I'd like to get towards, and again, something we talked a bit about in Finance Committee. I think within the confines of the budget that is approved by the board, I think I would like to let managers operate within those parameters, but anything outside of that, I believe should be coming back at least to the Finance Committee and potentially to the greater board for review and approval.
Thanks, Scott. Anyone else?
I had a question. It's Trustee Paczkowski here.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm just not sure. So that report that's attached to the meeting there, Scott, can we ask specific questions with regards to that report, or?
Sure.
Okay. So obviously we're projecting a surplus. I don't want to speak to the number as you mentioned just yet, but we are projecting a surplus. And based on the very different year we had, it looks like obviously our total projected spending in most areas is quite a bit under budget. I'm just wondering why divisional administration is the only one that's higher than what we budgeted for, and how that came about, I guess.
Yeah, I could definitely dig into that for you, Jared. I'm not prepared to answer that tonight, but I would suggest there are a couple of things in there that would cause some of that. Certainly, we had costs related to COVID in terms of some of the technology we've provided to teachers and things like that. But I'm happy to dig in and get some detail on that.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Jared. Anyone else?
I have a question. Was any documentation sent to the province as to what our estimated surplus was?
There's been 2 instances, Trustee Duma. The first one going back to, I believe, April, when they did ask for an estimated surplus as a result of any cuts or school closures or layoffs or things like that. They did come back, I believe, the subsequent time in May and said, at the end of May, and said, okay, now you've performed the cuts and closed the schools. What do your actual savings look like? So yes, there was 2 instances.
And have we seen any of that documentation that was provided?
I'd have to double check, but I believe so.
If we haven't, remind us or forward it to us as to what was provided to the province.
We'll certainly do that. Yeah.
Anyone else?
I have one just question about, I know that we're not necessarily involved with the adult learning centers, but do you have any information on how they're doing with this?
It's my understanding that their model is largely remote. And Kathy could probably yay or nay that. So I don't believe COVID had as large an impact on our adult learning centers as they did on our regular instruction.
Yeah, that's accurate. They do a lot of work online, do some check-ins. So they've been doing phone-in check-ins with all of their students. Yeah, I think they're on track.
Yeah, so we kind of assume then that they're pretty well not a lot changed for that area, correct?
Yeah, they run a pretty tight ship there. They have a pretty solid idea of their expenses and stick to their budget quite tightly.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else?
Can I just ask one more question? I guess because schools didn't have graduation ceremonies and there was no cost to parents for that, were there any other costs that parents had to incur because of grad that was different than because it was done differently? Did they have any other expenses or was it nothing?
A bunch of our schools, and Kathy can probably speak better than I about the process for grad, but I know a lot of our schools still did, although not a traditional graduation ceremony, sort of drive-through and pulling students up and their families one at a time. Sort of a student would stop by with 8 family members, get their diploma, and then sort of move on, and the next family would come along. So having said that, I'm sure the expenditures were not close to what they would have been with no dinner and things like that. I believe many of the schools still did robes. We still obviously do diplomas. We still had some decorations. We also took an extra step as a division in many communities and put some signs up in graduates' yards that, an SCI grad lives here, things like that. So, but I don't think a lot of that cost was passed on to the families.
Yeah, I wanted to know if there's any direct cost back to them for anything. So thank you.
We haven't heard anything about direct costs coming from families. We've heard tons of positive feedback around what schools did for graduates this year. So there were a number of parents who actually took the time to email or pick up the phone and say, wow, that was really great. We wanted you to know you did a great job with it.
Yeah, I concur, Kathy. There were some really good things that happened with I went to the Beaujeu. I went to Edward Schreyer, the parade. I could tell you the kids driving down Main Street and the parade and right in front of the school. I saw the Edward Schreyer staff and the relationship they had with those kids. It was really cool. So yeah, I think that everybody at the 5 high schools, there was some really good stuff that happened. So kudos to them. Any other questions from people? Okay, hearing none, we'll move off to thanks very much, Scott, for that information. And if you could follow up with that question from Trustee Pachakowski, that would help on August the 10th. 3.5, proposed subdivision, RM of Springfield. I don't know whose this is, whether if this is yours, Scott, take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. So 3.5 and 3.6 are there for information. I would appreciate if the trustees have a look. It's funny, Trustee Duma, this is one of the questions you asked a couple of weeks ago, or I think it was even more than that we finally got to. And out of the blue, you know, we've got 2 of these proposed subdivisions came through to Stacy and I in the last couple of weeks. One of the ones that came through to Stacy was actually addressed to her predecessor, so we think that may have been an issue from the Lands Department of the province. So we've now changed the contact information so that no more of those will get lost in the shuffle. But we'll definitely be taking part and communicating with both the Lands Department and PSFB to ensure that they consider the 10% obligation that's required to a school division.
Anybody want to comment on this?
I looked at this document and it looked very foreign to me. There seems to be the front letter that comes from land planning missing. Was there not a letter that accompanied this to the board? That came in the front of these other items? Because normally there's a letter from the land planning department. It's not just the application that comes forward. There's actually a letter asking for a response from Sunrise School Division.
I'm going to say this, and I'm looking at Stacy to confirm, but I don't believe a formal letter came with it, Diane, but there is the body of an email that does have some description. So we'd be happy to forward the email to trustees. Stacy, can you do that?
Well, the concern that I have with some of this stuff is usually the letter provides you with information as to the deadline for a response.
Correct, it does. Yeah.
So that is the important piece that has to come to the board to let us know what the response is that we're going to have and what the deadline is. Because once that window is gone, we cannot go back to ask for anything. So there's a piece missing in this agenda item.
Okay, what we'll do then, Diane, and I agree with you that it's in the body of the email. We can forward the email to you, and we can touch base again on the 10th of August. I believe both of these have a deadline. I want to say August 25th. I'm sure they're not both the same day, but they would be around the same day. Sorry?
Okay, so you'll get that back to us.
You bet. Yeah, absolutely.
And you didn't receive, did you, in your follow-up, did you find any back information from the other ones that were sent to us?
Not as of yet. Stacy did email to confirm changing our contact information. Maybe I can have her follow up next week and see if we missed anything in the interim.
Yeah, I wonder if that could happen, that she could actually take a walk over to Land Planning Department and just have a conversation, introduce herself, and let her know that she's the contact for all this information. That would be great.
Yep, she's nodding at me.
Anyone else? Thanks, Scott. And the other one is the RM of Alexander zoning bylaw. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, this is similar, Mr. Chair, in terms of you know, it's a letter that's been addressed to us with regard to a request for zoning change. So we'll follow up with the RM on that as well. That looks like a pretty substantial development, actually.
What I looked at it is that there's a 77-page package that's here that's talking about the different a whole variety of different things within the RM. I'm not so sure how many of those things pertain to the schools. Maybe there's lots, but I haven't taken a look at it yet.
Yeah, we definitely need to take a deeper dive. I did start reading through, but I didn't get through all 77 pages. That's correct.
Any questions from anybody on that?
Yes, that zoning bylaw of Alexander, I read all the 70 pages or whatever it is, 77, and there's nothing that really pertains to the school unless we are interested in changing some agricultural land to residential, but it doesn't really affect us very much. It's just a requirement to send to the school. There's nothing wrong with reading it, but if we agree with it, then we don't have to send anything back.
Thanks, Don. Anyways, it's for our information. We'll take a look at it, and Scott, have a look. And if there's anything that we need to be going ahead and doing, go ahead and do that. I think Don's given his help with it, so thanks for doing that, Don. I think that brings us to an adjournment. So just to revise.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I do have one question from the public.
Okay.
From Sylvia, just saying, can we expect to see smaller class sizes to allow for the 1 meter distancing inside classrooms?
So that was a question that was asked at the public briefing or the press conference by the province today. And the province is saying they're not touching class sizes, or they're not mandating class sizes. It is entirely around, can we ensure the health directives and the social distancing and social distancing, the hand sanitizing, and keeping people home when they're sick. So it is whether or not we can do that with the space we have. So we'll look at that and see what we can do with the cohorting and with the space, but the province is not reducing class sizes.
So I'm expecting, Kath, on August the 10th, and anyone else can jump in. There's a lot of questions that are still, a lot of what ifs. You're going to try to narrow down as many what ifs as possible. You're going to try to come out with, yes, we can do these kind of things. If we want to do these kind of things, this is what it's going to cost us. This is what the extra stuff is going to go ahead and be. You're going to have some of that. It's not going to be all narrowed down, but you're going to have some of that plan together for us for August the 10th. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think some of that also speaks to earlier we talked about how it's going to be different for different places and spaces. Some areas have class sizes that will fit into the rooms and the spaces they have, and some are a little bit larger. So we'll have to look at that on a school by school and an area by area basis.
Okay. So I don't know if there's anything else. We've got an adjournment here coming up. Scott, there's no other questions from the public then, I'm assuming?
That was the only one I had, Paul, correct.
Okay. Roundtable, I'm just going to go very quickly. You kind of know what the next 11, 12 days are for our senior admin team as to what they're going ahead and doing. You're going to get some questions. Kath sent out certainly some frequently asked questions, stuff that you can go ahead and take a look at. Is there anything that you're looking for particular for August the 10th from our senior admin, if possible? I'll go round table. Trustee Barry, anything?
Nothing that they're not already working on, Mr. Chairman. No, that's.
Okay, thanks. Trustee Duma.
One question that I have is, has schools of choice requests been affected by COVID? In particular, some grandfathering clauses that we've had for members of families going into schools through schools of choice. Has any of that been changed because of COVID reducing numbers or changing numbers being accepted into schools?
No, our process for schools of choice has been the same as it has always been. We look at the space available, the class sizes, the program offered, and all of those pieces. So yeah, it's been pretty normal.
Thanks, Trustee Duma. Trustee Harris?
No other questions at this time.
Trustee Inslee?
Another question. I just want to ensure that parents are given adequate time to prepare and as much information as early as possible so that the back to school on September the 8th, is it? Am I correct, Kathy? Yep. Just that the parents have got enough time to plan. That's just my only comment.
Thanks, Karen. Trustee Pachkowski?
No other questions at this time. Nothing.
Trustee Reed?
No questions.
Trustee Rowland?
No further questions. Thank you.
Trustee Nickel?
Yes, I have a question. For Kathy, you said you were going. Did you say that you sent out those questions, or are you going to send them out?
I'm just crafting the email right now, and then coming
okay,
back.
Because I hadn't received it, so I wasn't quite sure whether you sent them out. I didn't receive it or not.
No, I was waiting till October, Don.
Okay.
Hey, Kathy, thanks to you and Scott and to Jackie for the work that you have done so far, and then what you're going to be doing till the 10th. Thanks, kudos to that. Thanks to the board for this special meeting. We have another special meeting on August the 10th. Thanks and kudos to everybody. I think that we've got an adjournment, so I need a motion for an adjournment.
I'll move that we adjourn.
All right. All right, thanks. Oh, yeah, I guess on the 10th, we should talk about our meetings, in person, not in person. I know that we've kind of set an adjournment, so maybe we better, Dawn, you said it very nicely. The only restriction, the only caveat that we have is that our meetings going on in August, we do need to have the board chair, we need to have Kathy, we need to have Scott, and we need to have one other trustee. Dawn, you put it that a trustee only needs to attend once every 3 months, and we can do things through Teams. So that is still possible about us going ahead and doing that. We're going to be hard pressed to try to get all of us in that room social distancing in the first place, and social distancing as well as feedback from everybody when there's more of us in that room, and if we're doing it on Teams, is a bit of a challenge. So Dawn, I think that the suggestion is that we move forward with what the province has outlined to us, and also in our bylaw, is that we can still do things through Teams. The only stipulation is the superintendent and one other trustee need to be at the meeting with Kathy and Scott. Is that right, Kathy and Scott?
That's correct, yeah. So it has to be the chair, unfortunately, Paul, so you're on the hook for now. Kathy, myself, and one more trustee. And then the challenge, and Stacey's kind of been on me about this, is not on me, just reminding me that you know, it is a challenge for us to do a hybrid of Teams and live. I think if we do move to having more than just Kathy and Stacey and I in the room, you see, we all come and sit here with our headphones on, so we don't have feedback and things like that. We would probably move back to a model where we're using the conference call line as opposed to Teams, and then using the video capabilities of the NPR here.
So sorry about this. I guess we need to get everybody's opinion as to what you want to go ahead and do. Dawn, I'll start with you.
Well, I think what we should do is we should continue with Teams, and then we still have to have at least, in order for us to attend one meeting in person in 3 months, we would have to have probably one trustee at every meeting to allow everybody at least attend once in every month. So we'd have to rotate those. If Scott says you don't want a whole bunch of people there, we'd have to make a schedule so we know when the trustee is coming to be in person, so we don't have 10 people or 9 people all at once. But I'd rather have Teams.
Okay, Trustee Rowland.
Hi, sorry. I like Dawn's suggestion there as well. I don't mind the Teams. I think it works pretty well for us. But we would need a schedule to rotate in, but I'm also okay with coming in if that's the group's directive. I would do that as well. So I'm flexible.
Trustee Reed.
I'm happiest meeting in a group, but it doesn't matter. I live with either one, so we have to work it out somehow. We could have 1 or 2 people or trustees at a meeting, I guess, but I'm happy with either one.
Trustee Paczewski.
Hi. Yeah, you know, actually, I have a little bit of a different opinion. Well, it's similar to some I've heard. I think if we're going to be moving forward in the direction that it looks like we're going to be moving forward with students and teachers back in school, I think we have to be cognizant of the positions we're in and that we're leaders in this division. And I think for us to have them all back in buildings and schools and for us to be on Teams, I don't think that presents the right message. I'm fine meeting in a group at we're at the education center, and as long as we're doing whatever distancing we have to, if we can find a way to do that, I think that's what we need to do to, you know, to set the tone and to be supportive of our staff and students in our schools.
Thank you. Trustee Inslee?
Yeah, I totally agree with Jarrett, Trustee Pachowski. I believe that we should be meeting in person. I do think that that room is big enough. It's just that you're not going to be able to do the U shape, and not everybody's going to be on the video. But that room is big enough if you spread the tables out far enough. It's just if you want that little U shape that we normally have, that's not going to happen. But I do agree that from a health perspective, if a trustee is not comfortable with attending in person, then I'm okay with that as well. So if there's somebody, like we've said about students parents not being comfortable with their kids going to school right now, then if a trustee is not comfortable with meeting in person, then fair enough. But I think that Jarrett hit the nail on the head from a professional and responsibility perspective that we should be meeting in person. But obviously having the option, because if the weather's like turns nasty, we can't in that option.
Trustee Harris?
I echo Trustee Pachkowski and Inslee. I think we should be leading our division. We should be meeting in person. And based on the new word of the day, cohort, we are all cohorts in this. We can be 1 meter apart. Even if they're 2 meters apart, I think we can all fit in that room comfortably. Meet in person.
Trustee Duma?
I have no problem meeting in person. I think it's doable, but I also respect that people have the right to make a choice about that, respecting their own health. And I think we can accommodate anybody who decides that they'd like to continue online. We also can pass resolutions in regards to that if we wanted to. So I think that we can accommodate people. That's what accommodation is all about.
Trustee Berry?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'm okay with us, what a few other trustees said, to meet in person. I think we could accommodate the proper social distancing, but however, it's very important if someone doesn't feel comfortable being in the room as a trustee, it's the same option as a student not attending school or an employee. So yeah, we're the leaders of the school division. So yeah, everybody's going back to school. We should be going back to the boardroom also.
Okay, so what I understood was, for the most part, people are okay about meeting. And if people don't, that they should have the flexibility. So we will meet on in person on August the 10th. However, if somebody doesn't want to show up, we'll try to figure out how we can continue to go ahead and do that. It might not be through Teams, but it'll certainly be it'll certainly be someone to be involved in the conversation, because I think that Teams by us meeting in person is too much would be too much feedback. So Scott and Kathy, I'm going to leave that up to you. It looks like then we'll meet. Is the meeting time at 6 o'clock?
It was scheduled for 6, correct? Yeah.
Okay, so we'll meet in person on August the 10th at 6 o'clock at the Education Center. Not everybody certainly has to go ahead and attend. That'll be totally up to individual people. But could you let Stacy know if you're going to go ahead and attend, because we'll make sure that we'll have a spot for you.
I do have a question, Paul.
Okay.
I'm just wondering. I was the one. I said that I'd like to meet in person, and I thought we would start in September. On the 10th, I don't know for sure that I can make it in person.
That's fine.
I may not be here. I may be away, so I thought Teams was going to continue there. But
you'll still
on the phone probably.
Russ, if we meet in person, and if people can't make it because for one reason or another, you know what, we'll still find a way to communicate with you to go ahead and do that. I think that if people, again, I think all of you had said it's up to the individual trustees to find out whether they can go ahead and do it. It seemed like the majority of people have said yes, they can go ahead and meet in person. They feel like they should. So let's go ahead and do that. I don't disagree. You know what? If you can't go ahead, we'll make sure that we include you for sure somehow. And again, if somebody's away on August the 10th, If you can dial in, that's fine. But if somebody can't come to on August the 10th and it's for a reason that they're not feeling comfortable, that's fine too. Dawn?
Where's my,
You're muted, Dawn.
just a minute. Okay, are we going to have in camera on August the 10th?
I do. I'm not, you know what, when I talked with Kathy and Scott and Art, there wasn't a need for in-camera items for today. So I'm not so sure that, I think that all depends of whether we need to have in-camera items. If something needs to be in camera, then we would go ahead and do it. I think we're trying to get that information out as early as possible. But
Scott's computer has died, so if you can't hear him, we need to swap out.
Sorry, you
Okay.
see me here, my random battery power. I didn't mean to hang up on you guys.
Kathy and Scott, do you think that we need any kind of in-camera stuff on August the 10th?
The only thing that's running through my head, so the two big ones will be the transportation manager, which we need a resolution for. We'll bring a recommendation. Also the Green Church, which has to be public. So the only thing I would suggest is maybe a question to a couple of or an answer to a couple of questions tonight. But I can circulate that and we can assess whether or not you feel that's sufficient or if we need an in-camera piece.
So your question, Dawn, is whether you're in camera, whether you're here in person or not. I think that's going to be your question.
No, I was just wondering whether we're going to have an in-camera meeting because if we talk about the transportation manager, then it's pretty hard to discuss that in the regular meeting that it should be in camera.
Yeah, I agree.
I tend to agree with that as well. So maybe we want to do in camera at 6 and regular at 7, or do you want to go in camera earlier than 6?
Well, even if you have in camera at 6 and regular at 6:30, it's okay too.
Just Jackie, sorry, just because I happened to read the Clipper when I was in the office. It's already been advertised as 6 o'clock for the public, so I don't know if that matters.
It does. Yes,
Yeah, it does.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Jack.
Yeah.
So we know then we have a public meeting at 6. I guess, guys, if we need to have an in-camera one, 5:30. If that's the case, then you guys need to determine if we need a time for in-camera.
We can set that up for sure.
So we're in person. Nice work tonight, guys. Great questions from everybody. Thanks very much for going ahead and doing that. If you can't make in person on August the 10th, that's totally understandable. Let Stacy and the crew know. No. Oh my gosh. Okay. We did adjourn already, so thanks for adjourning. So we're out of here. Nice work, guys.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.